All right, thank you very much. We will now defer the floor to Interim Provost Tong for his report.
Thank you. I think the first item on the list is an update on Nakubo. So as some of the Senate leaders know, we had a special retreat for them, the SEC, on September 21st. And we went through all the slides with them. And that was the number 7 retreat in the last 2 months. So we have 1 for the dean, 4 for the chairs and directors, 1 for vice presidents, and 1 finally for SEC. So again, I just want to repeat what we discussed, that these are just Nakubo's ideas and suggestions, and we are not making any decisions right now, especially because we're asking Nakubo to update and refresh their data, asking them to use more recent data so that we're not just looking at completers, but also count service courses and total FTEs, right? So for all the programs. So, and I want to also point out that for quite a few months now, a few chairs and directors have been really proactive in finding ways to increase majors and enrollment on their own. So we want to continue to collect all their inputs. Okay. Now, let me go to the enrollment. So we're already thinking about spring registration will begin on November 1st. And students were sent registration appointment dates and times actually yesterday, October 2nd. Students are encouraged to meet with advisors to discuss scheduling all this month. So admissions is projecting a class of approximately 400 new undergraduates in the spring semester, primarily transfer students in Cal and education and engineering and PSFA. And we also expect approximately 50 new graduate students, mostly in College of Business and Engineering. And for fall 2024, the applications will open on October 1st and will close on November 30th for undergraduates. And for graduate programs, the deadlines are different for different programs. And AVP Stefan Hyman is training all the graduate program advisors starting next week on enhancing how we can improve on the graduate admissions and working with the graduate admissions work center to make the process more efficient and faster, including reviewing and making decisions on applicants. And I mentioned some of those last time. For example, we added a few staff lines for enrollment services, and also they will have about a total of 9, and also additional one for a graduate workflow manager to support advisors, and also technical improvements, including using the on-base system to help enrollment services to speed things up when they are processing the applications. And one of the other things they decided to do is to use WES evaluation, WES evaluation system for international applications. And that will speed things up And after talking to the deans and chairs and program advisors, that's what they proposed and decided to use. Also for spring, please save April 13, 2024 for Explore SDSU. We can help everyone to recruit our students, new students. Now, for fall 2023, I reported last time that we have a 37,600 students for this semester. The numbers have not finalized. We have not finalized all the numbers yet, even though census was on September 18. So we expect all the final numbers to be there soon. So the numbers, as I mentioned last time, we're breaking for the first time above 37,000, right? And also last summer, it was 11,082 students. So that's the highest ever for a summer enrollment number. And it's been going up about 5%. And we've been using summer semester in a lot of different ways that really benefit our students, including making up and catching up, and also eliminating some DFW issues. So it's been really helpful. And I really appreciate AVP Hyman, deans and associate deans and chairs for coming up with these classes for them in the summer and also during the academic year. Let's see. For the tenure track searches, we currently have 57 searches going right now. And as I mentioned last time, 8 of them are carry forwards from last year. And all the interfolio ads are going out, and some departments are way ahead of others. And depending on their recruiting schedule, timelines, they're all different in different program areas. So they're going well. And I also want to thank the BIE committee for working really hard with all these search committees. And we're hoping to get the approval to negotiate forms for some searches. They might be ready to go pretty soon. So that's my update.
Thank you. There are a couple of hands up.
Okay.
Chair Black, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. Provost Tong, per the most recent meeting of Academic Policy and Planning, we request that you also provide the number of faculty separations from last year so that we can get a complete picture of our faculty or our tenure track hiring.
Yes, we will get a table for that as soon as possible.
Thank you. Senator Chaumet, you're recognized.
Just a quick, really procedural, maybe comment. If you could just kind of like isolate what you're talking about with some kind of transitions, I would pick up better that one topic is not related to the next one that you're talking about. I got really confused about particular topics at the beginning of your presentation. So you just say, you know, if you could just say there are 3 issues you're going to talk about, and then 1, 2, 3, I would appreciate that, because right now it's just a blur what you presented to me. Thank you.
Senator Herman, you're recognized.
Yes, several questions. One, will you please release the NACUBA report to the Senate? The full report.
We talk about that at these 7 retreats, and they're not ready. They don't have the final version yet. As soon as they're ready, we will do that. And especially now that we're asking them to update the tables and their data sets. So it might take a few more months.
Okay, when you get the final report, will you please release it to the Senate? I'm assuming the nodding means yes. Let the record show. Okay, another question about the NACUBA report. What is the current thinking about streamlining the number of majors?
Right now, the president has said it repeatedly, and I have mentioned it a few times. We're not reducing or eliminating or considering any of that, any programs. And we just want to see how we want to improve our enrollment in certain areas. And so I appreciate that some of the deans and chairs and directors are talking about them and discussing with us. So at this point, no decision.
Okay, because that was part of the NACUBA report, streamlining the majors.
Well, yes, and as those who were present at these retreats, they've seen these tables where they talk about, programs with how many completers and majors, right? And those are tables, and they were just saying, these are the programs that need to consider and be creative and find approaches to recruit more students or do whatever they need to do. So they're not recommending anything. They're just saying, they're just showing the tables, the facts.
Does the current contract that you've signed with NACUBA for, I think it was, I need to check this, but close to $75,000, since you are continuing with this, is SDSU paying for more time, or is it covered by the present contract?
The contract was signed before I joined this office, so I don't know how much, but I'll find out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Sherman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd. Just a question for Interim Provost Tong. You mentioned that, quote unquote, right now, administrators and managers aren't looking to streamline majors, but the phrasing of right now suggests to me that possibly in the future, you all will be looking at this. And I fail to understand why we would hire a probably expensive consultant to look at some of this data and not use it. And so my question is there a chance in the future that you all will be streamlining majors?
We're not talking about that, so I don't know of any plans. But remember, NACUBA was looking into a lot of different things, right? Including budget models and how we determine and plan our budgeting processes. And so it's not just enrollment. There are other things they're looking into. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Senator Venkatarama, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Byrd. Provost Tong, I really appreciate you taking the time to come here and give us an update. There's a lot of information you are sharing with us. This would be nice if you can submit a summary of it through your office so it's entered into the records of the meetings of the minutes.
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you. Chair Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Provost Tong. You had mentioned that that you're asking NACUBA to do some use updated numbers, and I know I visited some of the forums, and I know one of the concerns was perhaps running the numbers using FTEs, not just number of majors. Is that something that you are going to ask NACUBA to do? Do you know at the moment if you're going to ask them to do it?
Yes, exactly that. And those, as some of you remember, that one of the tables they listed just the completers, right? And so a lot of departments on that table they had lots of FTEs, so they definitely should not be ranked that way. So we're looking into different parameters, and also not just use 1 year worth of data, right? Average it out to multiple years. That would be more reliable. And so looking into a few different things. Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief Santos. Derek, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to the question earlier that was asked of Provost Tong about the elimination of majors or impact of now versus future, and just state unequivocally SDSU is not ever interested in utilizing that data to reduce any major on our campus. We're not interested now. We're not interested in the future. That is not the president's posturing. We are trying to make sure we are preparing for the right justifications to the CSU. The CSU, as was discussed at their last board meeting, is looking at completers. To David's question about, are we looking at FTES? Are we recommending more sophisticated models? Yes, we started with completers because that's the rhetoric of the CSU. That's the data that the CSU is looking at. How many completers, how many graduates do you have in every major across the system? So we know they will be looking at that. They will be pulling that data. So we need to start the conversation early about how do we increase student interest at the completers level in our programs, not just for bureaucratic defending it to the system, though that has some value, but primarily too, because these tend to be some of our most important majors from a humanist standpoint, from the humanities standpoint, from the languages standpoint. These have critical value to civil discourse. And if students are not seeing the value of engaging in these majors because they're not seeing the match with workforce, with ROI, things that are valuable too, then we need to start the conversation about how do we make this case better to our students. That is the purpose of why we are looking at this. That is the reason from SDSU's perspective of why this has value, to showcase this and get our students more interested in these areas and these disciplines. We also know we will need to, because the system has told us, submit annual justifications for our majors and programs that have low completers, no completers. I think we'll do that and we will defend those programs, but we also want to show because they have value. There's a reason why we're offering them, why we should increase student interest and increase student enrollment, not just from FTS, but also completers. And so we're going back to NACUBO at the request of the chairs and asking them to slice and dice the data differently, use post-COVID data. We were asked by the chairs to look at 5-year aggregates as opposed to just 1-year snapshots, look at more modern enrollment data. And to the provost's point, 80% of the report is actually looking at, okay, where are you aligning your resources, looking at all funds. It's not, enrollment was one of 6 or 7 different things that they looked at. But we know we have to look at an all funds model too. When we spend this much energy as a campus arguing over 2 or 3 or 4 million extra dollars that we might have gotten from the system, that's never going to address our academic needs. It's never going to address our infrastructure needs. It's never going to address our student needs. We need to look at the totality of our budget and look at decisions we made 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago and say, is that where we need to continue to be investing those funds? Or should we help direct them more towards our academic core, towards our infrastructure core? What can we do better? And that was also one of the impetus for bringing on NACUBO, who is the National Association of Business and Academic Officers, to just say, where are other universities who are recent R2 to R1s? What are they doing differently? And how can we be better stewards? That was the larger ask. Looking at our cross-section of enrollment was one of the many tables that they showed. But frankly, we're taking that and saying, okay, how can we talk to those departments to increase student interest in those areas? But not now, not going forward. Is it SDSU's interest to use that as some smokescreen cover for trying to eliminate any program? If anything, it is a call to action to increase student interest in those areas. I just wanted to be clear.
Thank you. Senator Shomei, I see your hand is up, but we are we're over time with our next time surge.
Just a very, very quick.
And you're right behind that. You have a time surge coming up. So
I know.
I'll get to that point. On to our next time surge and then come back to you.
Oh. I really don't need to make that comment then. Okay, I don't appreciate you cutting me off, but that's okay. Thank you.
All right. AVP McCall, you're recognized to present on your WASC reaffirmation and GE update.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your time. I just wanted to give you a very, very quick update on what's happening with our WASC review. As some of you may know, we were last reviewed in 2015, 2016, and we were given a 10-year reaffirmation, which is, by the way, the highest you can get. WASC will be coming back in 2026 and our report is due to them, our self-study, in 2025. Last year, the Senate convened a WASC reaffirmation committee with the sole purpose of deciding what kind of review we wanted to request and requesting that review. We did that. Our review request was for something called a thematic pathway for reaffirmation. It's a little bit shorter in terms of the paperwork that is needed. Our themes were approved by WASC in July, and now we are moving forward with actually drafting a self-study. What we've planned on this year is to draft, and I do mean draft, a self-study. We hope to have that self-study or some version of it done by May of this year, of this academic year, with the intention of leaving the entire next year, the 2024-2025 academic year, for shared governance, for everyone's input into that report. And so we've actually left a little bit more time for the shared governance process. We have left an entire year. The intention is to go to each and every committee that would have some input and take everyone's input so that we can come up with a final report that reflects the university community's feelings, thoughts on the state of the university. And that's where we are. There is a WASC website. It's the link is located in your agenda. The personnel on the committees are there. The timelines are there. The new WASC standards for 2022 are also there. I should ask that WASC changed all their standards in 2022. So we will be the first group that the new standards, to whom the new standards apply. So we will be writing everything to that as well. No, Chair Butler-Bird, would you like me to go on to GE?
I was just gonna ask Senator Herman, does your question have to do with WASC or is it going to have to do with GE?
No, it has to do with WASC.
Okay, so please go ahead and ask your question.
Will the WASC report deal with tenure density, which is another way of saying the fact that the majority of our courses are now taught by adjuncts and the number of tenured and tenure track faculty is dwindling?
So there are several sections of the WASC report. One of them is called the Federal Guidelines for Reaffirmation. The Federal Guidelines for Reaffirmation are basically exactly that. Every single statistic that you could ask for about the university needs to be covered there. So if you look, Senator Herman, on the WASC website, you'll see something called the Federal Guidelines. There used to be 39 of them. There's like 29 of them now. And each one of them needs to be justified with evidence that we are meeting up with the WASC standards. And of course, tenure density is one of them. I think that's in section 2.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, AVP McCall. You can go ahead and present on GE.
I don't have much to present on GE, nothing more than I had at SEC. Sorry, I thought I would learn more last week, but I did not. We know, of course, that Assembly Bill 928 has moved forward, that there will be a new pathway for transfer students that reduces the GE for transfer students by 5 units. That pathway is 11 classes and a lab, so 34 units total, where our lower division GE pathway was 39 units. The items that have been eliminated and removed from the GE pathway, they have eliminated Area E, lifelong learning, from the GE pathway for transfer students. And they've also eliminated 3 units of humanities from the GE pathway for transfer students. And they've added a standalone lab for those that don't have a standalone lab. We know that that has been approved for the transfer students. The question on the table remaining is whether or not that will be applied to freshmen as well. But Chair Butler-Bird, I had hoped that there would be some more information on that last week, and I did not receive any more information on that. So to the best of my knowledge, that question is still pending.
Okay. So I'm going to ask folks to hold any questions because we're going to have SDSU Senator and Chair of the GAC, or the Chancellor's Committee on General Education, to speak, and that's Senator Sermay, you're recognized.
Well, thank you so much. I think, the reason I wanted to talk to you all is because there is this misguided conversation from the Chancellor's office to the campuses particularly to presidents and provosts of what we should do versus our committee, or not committee, but our community rather, as a faculty to really be in charge of our curriculum. And so the misguided conversation that has been kind of floating around really from spring on is that Cal GETSI, which is this transfer, AB 928 transfer standards and transfer curriculum, will be applicable to our freshmen as well. And so my purpose here today is to kind of like maybe demystify that. And so you will see my memo. I think my very first paragraph there is really putting out what the actual item is. And so I would like to go to maybe not talking about how the Chancellor's office had foregrounded all of this and tried to frame us in thinking that we need to align, but maybe just to kind of highlight where the discrepancies are. And so that's what I'm kind of trying to do. And maybe I'm going to follow up probably at the next Senate meetings about asking your opinion about this. But here are the facts, okay? So AB 928, which was passed last year, asked the Intersegmental Committee of Academic Senates, which comprises the community colleges, the CSU, and the UC, to establish a singular lower division general education pathway that meets the academic requirements necessary for transfer admission to the CSU and the UC. And I think the "and" is really, really crucial. So if you read further on the slide here, you will see that the transfer pathway would be for both systems, not just one of them. And so you will have the actual link to the AB 928 linked to that slide. But what we want to see is that what's the difference between CSU GE and AB 928? Well, you know, AB 928 will have to be implemented by no longer or further than fall 2025. That's not applicable to CSU GE. So changes to CSU GE have no limits. They can be done at any point in time. Mind you, the Chancellor's office is trying to align these two systems so that they can get it done, you know, the same way. So whatever applies to transfer students will apply to our freshman students as well. So, but I just want to make sure that you understand that for us to be able to make any CSU GE change, there is no time limit for that. For the AB 928, there is a time limit because it has to be implemented by fall 2025. So that's the first item. The second item, CSU GE changes to CSU GE will also require Title V changes, of course, just as much as the changes to Title V regarding AB 9, the transfer students. However, once again, there is no time limit for us to change CSU GE versus AB 928 changes to Title V. The CSU, the Chancellor's office is really pushing forward really hard to make those two Title V changes at the same time. That's nonsensical, okay? And by now, I actually have new information about this because the CSU Chancellor's office kind of rounded up the GAC committee and the Academic Affairs Committee to discuss further as to the timeline. And we agreed that we're not going to have the Title V changes for CSUGE for sure in November and January. So that's a fact, which is new information, by the way. And I'm going to reiterate that later. So AB 928 implicitly requires changes to ADT. We need to figure out what that means for us. ICAS, which is, I said, is the Intersegmental Committee for Academic Standards, which requires the community colleges, the CSU, and the UC to talk together, really determine how transfers and admissions to CSU is handled, but has nothing to do with the CSU admission. So again, if we apply the whatever is kind of like outlined with AB 928 to our own GE, it would be through an outside agency that tells us what to do in the CSUGE. And more prominently, we would apply UC standards. And my next slide will actually kind of like get to that UC standards to our own CSU standards. And I'm not sure we want to do that. So I think the bottom line is that we want a genuine discussion with a sufficient time to recommend whether lower division GE needs to change, rather than the change be driven by some legislative, like AB 928 intrusion, that some opportunistic administrators, which there are many in the chancellor's office, I must say, administrators would like to take up, or driven by efficiency in administrative actions, because that's what it smells like right now. All of this smells like an EO 1100 squared. So the next slide will tell you actually where the, thank you, what the differences are. And so we can think about this further, and I'm going to get back to you about this, next month and the month after. But just for us to understand what the differences are between the CSUGE and the transfer CalGETSE that allows students to transfer to the CSU and to UC are, well, CSUGE has a lifelong learning 3 units, and Area C humanities 9 units right now. CalGETSE reduces those units from 34 to 39 and allows no Area E and allows no Area C, leaving us with 6 units in Area C in humanities rather than 9. The other one is CSUGE allows an embedded lab within a 3-unit course. CalGETSE does not. The transfer students will have to take a 1-unit science lab separate from 3-unit courses if they wanted to kind of like transfer to us or to the UC. We might have that already. I don't know. Madhavi can tell. But I think I feel like we might have that 1-unit extra lab already on our agenda. Our curriculum there. CSUG Area 1 has a broad definition of oral communication, which the CalGETSE does not. It has a very narrow definition, and I urge you to go to the CalGETSE standards to see what those are. CSUG Area 3, critical thinking, has a different definition, which actually requires a 5,000-word essay rather than no writing at all. And so that's very different from our, maybe not on our campus, but system-wide. We're thinking about system-wide here, a system-wide understanding of what critical thinking should be. And so more importantly, actually, because these are like differences, right? But the standards are coming in the next 2 items. And one is that CLEP, which is the college level examination program allows for students to come into our program in tandem with IB and AP credits, whereas Cal Getsy explicitly prohibits CLEP. And so it's only IB or AP students who can come to our programs. I don't know the statistics for this, but it would be interesting to find out how many CLEP students we would lose if we didn't have that kind of authorization. Finally, and this is the biggest stickler, and that is CSUG requires an overall GPA of 2.0 for GE classes overall, right? So a GPA of 2.0, whereas Cal Getsy requires a 2.0, which is a C, in every single course that the students take as they transfer into our program. So in a way, I wonder, what are we going to do with the students who, okay, so the students come into the community colleges and they say, okay, I want to do either, CSU or UC or UC, right? Okay, what if they don't meet the requirements? What are we going to do with those guys? So the myths, in a way, that the chancellor's office had put out so far are the following, and I'm trying to kind of like, work against that a little bit. So the CSU pattern has to be the same as the Cal Getsy. Why? There is no viable reason other than administrative efficiency to make it the same. I have not heard any other reason for that from the chancellor's office. At the same time, faculty really feel like they are in charge of the curriculum, and therefore they should be able to say whether the CSU GE lower division should change or not. Okay, so faculty should talk about this. How does an alignment affect the quality of the CSU GE? That's a big question, actually. Secondly, CSU GE changes to lower division have to happen now. They have kind of like put this forward 1,000 times that we need to have that on this timeline, and it needs to happen by November and January 24. That's nonsensical. There is no timeline for the CSUG changes to be made, even though the AB 928 changes to Title V will have to be made by January. So that's true, but we're arguing that no changes to CSUG is made by that period of time. So there has to be a robust consultation with faculty about changes, if at all. Finally, not finally, but the third point is grading standards are not part of academic requirements. Some of the lawyers said that in the and the chancellor's office, and they were trying to argue that, the standards in there are saying academic requirements, but standards are not part of that. But they actually are, because I think that you can't really just take classes and not pass the class, right? That's kind of like nonsensical. So if I could go to the next slide, that's my final couple of points there.
You only have 1 minute left.
Yeah. Imposing Cal Getsy standards to CSUGE, some say will help our enrollment because it would have more transfer students in the CSU. At the same time, 70% of Dominicus Hills and 60% of Chico students would not meet the transfer criteria as it stands right now for Cal Getsy. So what are we going to do then? What are we going to do with the students who don't meet that criteria? They also say that it helps students graduate, but I don't see how, because they have 60 units there, 60 units here. I don't see how they are going to help them. And help retention, they also claim that it helps retention. I don't see how, especially if they're not even get into our program. So that's just my presentation. I think there's going to be a follow-up. Maybe it's going to be a questionnaire for you to see how your program might be affected by changes, CSU lower division freshmen. We'll see how this unfolds. I must say, last week we met with the chancellor's office, and I can't say that we came, through, but at the same time, the dialogue is there. Hopefully, they're going to take our input more seriously, that they need more robust
Thank you,
faculty
Senator
feedback.
Bennett, for your
Thank you.
report. If you all have questions, you'll please follow up with Senator Chomay. We do have a
Thank you.
time certain, and that's with VP Sheehan will provide a SDSU update next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Butler Bird. Good afternoon to members of the Senate. Wanted to provide a brief update on the development work that we've been doing that came out of our shared governance process, looking at the priorities for enhancements to the SDSU infrastructure. We could go to the first slide. Our process is to move through an effort that allows us to develop technology, then we move it into test and production. There are 4 efforts that I want to update you on. The first, the graduate admissions workflow. The second, a change in being able to designate the default campus that you want to search for and the schedule of classes. Want to talk about the enhancements to the time-based view of the schedule for students that'll be in SDSU, and then the work that we've done to increase the discoverability of interdisciplinary majors and minors. You would see that 3 of those right now go into production October. I would say I just finished conversations with Associate Vice President Hyman, just to make sure that I was right in timing. The graduate admissions workflow will go into production next week also. If we could move to that first slide on the graduate admissions workflow. As you remember, we talked about the fact that we wanted to move into a technology infrastructure that would allow us to have multiple members of committees, be able to review proposals, the technology that folks knew and had used before in OnBase. So we started meeting back in August to get at our requirements from our graduate advisors, from folks in graduate admissions, also from the grad school. That led to our development of a process that then went through testing on both the state side and on the global campus side. I should say also that I apologize, the slide is actually inaccurate. The go live for this continues to be October 6th, but we're moving up the graduate advisor training to the 4th of October. So we'll be starting it tomorrow to allow us to have more of an opportunity to provide support and explanation of the new workflow, make sure that folks have an earlier exposure to it. So that project moving ahead and complete right now, getting ready to move into production. The next thing that we talked about, which was a dominant conversation that we had, heard this from associated students, heard it from our leadership in student affairs, also heard it from many deans, department heads, and faculty members, was that the current configuration, the prior configuration of the schedule of classes that allowed when a search was conducted for all classes and all campuses to show results was not efficient for students. And so we needed to move in, modify the user interface. You see the screenshots of what the user interface will look like. This will go into production next week. A student, when they are in the schedule of classes, will be able to designate which campus they want to search courses for, San Diego, the Imperial Valley, or Global. I should indicate also that the Global campus would cover our Georgia campus. And then we want to keep that consistent. There is a more advanced search, which is under the additional ways to search. The screenshot that you see in the lower right-hand corner is an example of that same parallelism carried over to allow students in either interface to look at the campus primarily that they want to search for. From our conversations with our students, one of the things that was a functionality that had been in the legacy system was prior to enrolling in a class, as you were sort of figuring out your schedule, you could actually look at a time-based view of your schedule. Last semester, that was not possible in SDSU. We've worked to do development work. This will now be integrated into SDSU. The colors indicate the nature of the courses. Green is something that a student is enrolled in. I believe that gray is something that is a waitlisted class. And if there was a class in conflict, it would show up in red. This will allow students to move back and forth and look at this. We had an opportunity to get input from our associated students group. We've met with them twice on the user interface. This will probably undergo some continued tweaking modification as we get more user input after this gets exposed next week. Final thing that we were working on as a development priority that we've accomplished is trying to increase the ease of being able to discover interdisciplinary majors and minors. This was something that in the legacy system, essentially those individuals associated with individual majors and minors would send out a link that would allow students to see all of the courses in their particular area. What we've been able to do is work to identify with the department the courses that are applicable for interdisciplinary majors and minors. We're adding a data attribute that'll be entered by folks who are doing the class scheduling, and that will then allow interdisciplinary majors and minors to be searched for directly. And you can see in the screenshot that's shown, once the data results come back, you can then also go in, see it as a class attribute, similar to what we have right now for our general enrollment functionality. So again, this is something that would promote that discoverability. We are going to pilot this. There are some classes right now that have a large number of sections. There was concern about getting those ready for next week. So this will be in a pilot and assessment that we'll be doing primarily with the faculty in Cal. That moves us to our next development efforts. These are substantial, so I wanted to make sure that I closed out the overview with the final slide, talking about two large upcoming changes. The first, which we've briefly talked about previously, is the federal financial aid simplification. This is a change being made by the federal government to the way essentially financial aid is calculated and granted. It is the most substantial change that has happened in financial aid within the last decade. It essentially means that all of the configuration, all of the calculations of financial aid, all of the bill payment that we did last year, all of that has to be redone according to new federal rules, which are not yet available. Those rules are in the process of being finalized right now. It is a good thing that the government did not shut down. That allows us to continue on the pace that the federal government is getting us information on. The goal of the system is to have software from Oracle that would allow this to be implemented in January, and then we will need to move through the testing and the configuration. This will compress financial aid timelines, again, required by federal law. This is a mandate. We're working right now on our proactive communications to students and families. We've begun to let students who are looking for financial aid forms right now know that they are not there, and they won't be for a while, given this pending change from the federal government. We have a tiger team from financial aid, student financial operations, enrollment, strategic communications, information technology, partners in EAB and Huron, giving the sophistication of looking at the data of how this will change students, and then what we'll need to do to technically implicate it. This is a large project. It will go on into the spring of 24 as we get ready to hit that financial aid change. The second thing that we are working on as a major development effort is the implementation of a veterans module. This is something that was designed by the CSU to allow the system to better track and report on veterans data. It is something that SDSU has had as a lingering audit for 2 years as a requirement. So we have an audit requirement that we address this. It'll be led by our partners in student affairs with IT, academic affairs, and global campus. That work will kick off in late October, probably take, my guess is 5 to 7 months to implement that change. So we would be ready for next cycle. So that was an expedited review of our development priorities, the progress that we have made, the upcoming work that we are looking next at doing. Happy to answer any questions from any members of the Senate.
Thank you, VP Sheehan. We have a couple of hands and we have a few minutes before our next time certain. Chair Bajon, you're recognized.
Thank you, and I hope my sound is better. I was told it was not very good before, but let me know if not. So, I mean, I think this is all impressive and a lot is done. Now, from the viewpoint from an advisor, and it's just not me, there was a major issue, and there is still a major issue in that I was told my SDSU is not integrated with the degree evaluation, which basically means that students would have all their prerequisite courses evaluated. They came from the community college. They were told that you have the prerequisites, but they still could not enroll. So we needed to submit exception memos. And I must have submitted over 100. Many students, the prerequisite was just, you could just see in the degree evaluation. Moreover, students were sometimes routed through 5 different advisors because nobody know who was, responsible for fixing a technical error. Is it the advisor where the course is given? Is it the center? Is it the major advisor, coordinated care advisor? So I think, this might be on your radar, but I think this would be a nice technical issue to fix also by next summer.
Thank you very much for the question. Happy to follow up and look at that. I would point out that degree evaluations are integrated into my SDSU. So the issue that you point out notwithstanding, the auto graduation that we were able to do over the summer shows that tight integration. It is the way that things continue to be. I think the workflow issues that you're talking about, Chair Babone, happy to go back and talk more with AVP Hyman on and see where those are in development priorities.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions in a few minutes. Senator Herman, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Leaving the final slide alone, it's very hard not to have the impression that my SDSU was launched half-baked, that it was not complete, resulting in endless amounts of time wasted as everyone tried to figure this out. So my question is basically, why? Why was this system launched with so many bugs, so many parts of it were undeveloped or poorly developed?
So thank you very much,
What
Senator.
was the rush?
Thank you very much, Senator Herman, for your comments. Let's start with why we changed into the student information system, which was going to be the inability of SDSU to grant financial aid to 60% of our students. So the reason that the system moved through the cycle, which was abnormal, we led with financial aid before we moved into these issues with our course registration, was the criticality of financial aid to our students and the fact that we were not going to be able to grant financial aid. As a case in point, the first bullet on this slide, the financial aid simplification, the old system would not have been able to do. So we would not be granting financial aid. Second thing, while we can certainly differ in the functionality of my SDSU, I would point out that this isn't a half-baked system. It is a system that has existed on 22 of the other campuses for over a decade. So this is a well-developed piece of software. The functionality changes that we are making are customizations that are desired by our campus. They're important, and we've attempted to integrate those and prioritize those through our shared governance process.
Okay, thank you. Senator Venkataraman, you're recognized.
Yes, this is going back to the issue of prerequisites. My understanding is at the moment, my SDSU cannot recognize the requirements for impacted majors to come into the major. What I'm seeing as a result is now there are a number of curriculum proposal changes for prerequisites that are listing those 4 courses required to make it into the major as a course prerequisite for every single major course. And my explanation for why this is done is because either my SDSU cannot do it or will not do it. This is, if I understand, the 3rd year of my SDSU implementation. If we still cannot do prerequisites, I find it hard to believe this was a well-tested system.
Thank you very much for your comment. The prerequisites that we have, and I would point out that my SDSU is enforcing more prerequisites automatically than have ever been enforced before. The issues of growing out those prerequisites depend on us being able to know equivalencies and working on programming the language that's used to enforce that, something that we've been working on with our partners in academic affairs. I'd also point out the system used for course registration has been live for effectively 1 year right now. So there are continued modifications. Goes back to our early conversation also about if all prerequisites are really prerequisites that should be enforced by the system. That's one of the reasons that you've seen those changes. Happy to follow back up on anything that is a specific question on any of the GE requirements, and happy to address that also with AVP Hyman.
This is not GE requirements. These are the requirements that students are asked to meet to satisfy to become transfer from pre-major to major. So,
Okay,
so
my
right now
apologies.
students who are not in the major are able to register directly for the upper division courses, which has problems for us because if that gets audited in our accreditation, that would affect our accreditations.
Thank you for that. Happy to follow up on it. The guidance on which prerequisites are enforced have come from the department. If this is an area that isn't appropriately addressed, happy to look into it and report back on it.
Dean Osterk is the person in engineering you should talk to.
All right, well, thank you. I know the two of you will get together and help figure that out. Thank you, VP Sheehan, for your report. We're moving to our next time certain, and that's our AS President Morrissey's report. You're right.
Yes, however, Mike, I like to. How's everyone doing? Hopefully this will be one of the less controversial things on today's agenda. It's a little bit interesting that I've noticed a trend in these meetings, a lot of people sort of coming a little bit hostile, and I'm interested in wondering why certain people believe that's the best approach to getting things done. I think that controlling the way we all speak and respecting everyone's sort of impossible miracle that they're pulling off is a good way to go about discussing things with other people. And I am finding my reports. Okay, so let's start with what AS is doing. AS Career Services Collaboration was announced to all students through the newsletter that came out promoting Associated Students and our partnership with Career Services, as well as our career kickoff event happening on November 3rd. That career kickoff event will be hosting a lot of different campus partners, and people will be tabling. If you have suggestions for who you believe would be important to have a tabling spot at that career kickoff event on November 3rd, 1 to 3 p.m., let me know, because there will be projected around 200 to 300 students there from 1 to 3 p.m. in that time period, circulating in and out of the union. There will be food, and there will be big notable alumni, which we will be awarding with an exceptional alumni award, and then we'll be giving a quick speech, and then we'll have some big alumni give a keynote speech. And after that event, we will be discussing and announcing the different AS Career Voyage, which is what the program is called, AS Career Voyage events and services that will be offered in the union and in the Career Lounge starting from November 3rd, and that will be rolled out. After November 3rd, we will be creating the Student Advisory Career Committee. That committee will be bridging the gap between AS and a lot of different campus partners. And those gaps have existed historically, and we are rekindling relationships on a formal level with certain campus partners so that there is a direct line of communication and a scheduled line of communication each and every year. Certain people will be meeting with this career committee 4 times a year, twice a year, etc. It just really depends on the level of collaboration that's needed from these different partners. Homecoming weekend, Monday 3rd, or homecoming week, which is Monday, November 3rd through Saturday, November 4th. Sam Legal, the external vice president, executive vice president is spearheading homecoming. There will be festivities and events throughout the week. SDSU homecoming website is up to date with events. The theme is All Roads Lead Home, and the design encompasses the various landmarks across our different SDSU campuses. So we have even the Imperial Valley cool tower that they have on the poster, so we made sure to include them. And actually, something that will be announced during that homecoming is the AS Alumni Speaker Series, which ties into the career goal. And certain alumni that we are talking to are not available for November 3rd. Those alumni that express interest but are not available during November 3rd will be rolled out into the AS Alumni Speaker Series. So Melvin, who was sitting next to me 33 minutes ago, is working on our Rock the Vote campaign. It's up and running. It's looking to register as many student voters as possible, while educating them on the importance of voting and civic engagement. We'll be circulating important material information in an effort to reach as many students as possible. This is a particularly interesting and probably entertaining year, the presidential election. So Rock the Vote typically sort of dies down around spring semester, but this year it's an all-year initiative, all-year endeavor, and it'll actually probably pick up maybe during spring because you know, the elections are always interesting and the debates are fun to watch. Leo Pena, VP of Financial Affairs, is working on Assets Rock Hunger. We are projected to break the record this year. It will begin on October 13th and November 5th. And this campaign helps to raise funds to fight food insecurity, and a kickback of the food that is donated goes to the AS Food Pantry, which is open during certain hours, and a lot of students rely on it to save money for their food bill and actually feed them and their families. And Allie, right in here, is Allie, by the way, guys, is partnered with the university library for a banned book readout. One of the books that's banned that I'm excited to actually read out is Captain Underpants. It's banned because he doesn't obey authority, and that's why it was banned. So all of these books are banned for a different reason. Whatever it is, they're banned for that reason, and we are exposing the books that have been banned, and we're going to do a readout on tomorrow from 12 to 1 p.m. If you guys could all come, I'm sure you all have a busy schedule, but if you can't come to that, you can all make it up to AS by coming on November 3rd to the career kickoff event, and then I will have forgiven all of you. And I would love if you could all come out and talk to some of the alumni table if you want, and just give me any suggestions. If you want to be highlighted or spotlighted on that date, you know, please reach out to me. We're also in collaboration with the Division of Research. So we had the VP of Research and Innovation, Halaman, come to our last CLC meeting to discuss the different initiatives and the new programming that they're rolling out to allow students to do research during the semesters that previously weren't available. And we've identified certain weak points in their plan that it's not necessarily their fault, but there's certain things associated students can do to help them. And we are working heavily with research and innovation to make sure that those gaps are filled and encourage their journey to R1 certification, which will help every campus partner, every student, and increase the value of the SDSU degree. And those are the main things that we're working on right now. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you so much for your report. We're now going to move on to our next item, which is counseling and psych services and university police. The collaboration to respond more effectively to urgent mental health situations on our campus. We welcome Directors Kano Murphy and Juan. We have two speakers.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd. Hello, Senate. Appreciate the time today just to talk to you a little bit about a new innovative program that we've really been working hard on for the past couple of years. This program comes out of the student voice. We know that AS a couple of years ago really wanted to make it known that we needed options in responding to crises in our campus community, mental health crises in our campus community. From that, I'm very appreciative of AVP Mays, Joshua Mays, who's helped to spearhead this collaboration between UPD, Counseling and Psych Services, as well as the School of Social Work. So that's where this program comes from. It is in development, ongoing, and has just opened. So I definitely wanted to give some time to our incredible staff, LCSW, Irma Kano Murphy, and Dr. Devin Hallquist will tell you more details about the program.
Thank you. So the Psychiatric Crisis Assessment Support Team is a service that will respond to behavioral health crises on campus. We will serve anyone on campus here to provide support in that space. We are a co-responder model, meaning that we will work collaboratively with the UPD to provide, again, the response, the on-site assessment, and to come up with the best option for that individual. We will do this in a holistic approach, being compassionate, person-centered, and from a trauma-informed approach. The services that PCAS provides to the community are the on-site assessments, the de-escalation of the situation, and then of course come up with the best course of action. And again, when I say collaboration, it's also collaboration with our CMPS providers in the form of consults, but also coming up with a plan with the police and working together with them as to whether they stay on site, whether they stand by, whether they are part of the discussion. So that really does depend on what situation is presenting. We also are going to be following up with students who are taken to the local emergency rooms, the hospitals, the inpatient facilities, and the crisis stabilization units. We are forming those relationships, building those relationships, letting people know who we are so that we can work together while students are in those facilities. And that could be discharge planning, providing collaborative information, getting ROI signed, and getting them connected to the resources they need while they're there so that when they come back, they have the support that they need. Once the crisis is resolved, our services do not end. We are providing a continuum of care where that we will continue to work with that student, whether it's case management, whether they need brief therapy. Evan and I are both licensed therapists. We can provide that for students on a short-term basis, whatever it is they need, or get them connected to a therapist or a mental health provider in the community.
So right now, our hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. We did start this past Sunday with extending our hours. So we had a shift on Sunday, 6 p.m. to midnight. And we're kind of looking at the data, the different calls, and trying to identify the days where more things are happening. So because we are 8 to 4:30, we are partnering with MCRT, that is the mobile crisis unit that serves all of San Diego County. And they are open 24/7, 365. So when we're closed at 4:30, hopefully MCRT can respond. They are a non-law enforcement option. Their teams are made up of a social worker, a case manager, a peer recovery coach. And we have been working with MCRT in the hopes that if they respond to one of our students, that student will give permission for then us to handle the follow-up services, getting them back on track on campus, and that kind of thing. The calls that we can respond to, both PCAS and MCRT, we can respond to any mental health emergency that does not involve a risk of violence, danger, or a medical emergency. So whether that's like suicidal ideation, psychosis, sudden death of a loved one, we are there for that. And students, anyone in the SDS community can request PCAS by calling 911. The call gets routed to dispatch and they are trained to determine if PCAS is an appropriate resource. Same with MCRT. You can also get connected with them by calling 911. Or the county access and crisis line, and we remind students that number is on the back of their red ID. So we know we just have a little bit of time today, just giving you kind of the appetizer about MCRT and PCAS, but we are giving more detailed, longer presentations to various departments. So if anyone in your department is interested in that, please reach out to us and we would love to come share a little more.
Thank you so much for that snapshot of the work that you're doing. Is critically important to the well-being of our campus. And we appreciate your patience in coming to the Senate as well. Any questions? I didn't see any. Oh, there is one, a couple of hands up. All right. We do have a couple of minutes. Senator Sherman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd, and I'll be brief. And thank you so much to our presenters for that presentation. I'm really happy to see that we're working on alternatives to police, which are needed. My question or concern, I was wondering if you all have had conversations about what I'm about to ask, which is it seems like there's alternatives, but the calls are still routed to 911, which to me isn't necessarily an alternative. You're still contacting the police, and then the police, the dispatchers have the power to decide where the call should go. And my main concern is we all know that marginalized groups, folks of color, are over-policed. And so I don't know how this structure solves the problem of having individuals that are maybe ignorant or have implicit bias that are still going to decide, you know, oh no, this might be a dangerous situation or a violent situation, not maybe based just on the situation, but also the demographics, the characteristics of the people that are being called in. Hopefully that made sense. And I'm just wondering if you all have had conversations about that.
Yeah, they have a response. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's a really good question. And one I think that is really complex in the sense that our main concern, well, not our main concern, our main concern as a program is to address the mental health needs of the student, the community member. We also know that our police department is heavily invested in safety overall. And one of the things that we need to do in this co-responder model is to assure the safety of any party involved, whether it be the student, whether it be other members of the community. So this question comes up a lot in terms of why would we call the police if this is not a service that we're not trusting or perhaps really believe is going to be helpful to us. We are working with our dispatch right now in providing the training on making the best decision possible. Our county models also are very similarly kind of based in, at least previously, with PERT, contacting the police in order to provide that kind of crisis intervention. So I guess my answer to the question is that it is something that we are addressing and something that is important to us in training our dispatch to be able to make those decisions without having to necessarily activate police first. PCAS in itself is a co-responder model. That is the model of service provided that the research shows is most effective in addressing the safety concerns of these situations. There is another line that we do utilize, which is the ACL, which I think we spoke about earlier, the Access to Crisis line. So it is an option for students, community members who do not want to activate the police or to activate dispatch in order for the services to actually happen. So hopefully that answers it. I don't know if there's anything else you all wanted to add to that. Yes, Access to Crisis line will screen for MCRT if appropriate.
Thank you. Time for one last question. Senator Barboni, sorry, Chair Barboni. Sorry, Chair Barboni, you're recognized.
Thanks. I'm very glad to hear about this service. Many times it was said for the campus community or keep everyone on campus. And so I want to know whether that's true or if this is a service for students only.
So, I'm sorry, the question is this service for all campus community or just for students?
Yeah.
I'm some guy who wandered onto campus, but I'm not a student, but I'm on campus. Yes. Is this available to me?
So PCAS primary service will be for the student body. MCRT is the county service that's provided for community members who may not identify as students on our campus. So this is what makes this, I think, collaboration very special, is that it does include the county's MCRT program as an option outside of our police department for all those other folks who are on campus who might have mental health emergencies.
And our police, if they do show up to a situation where it's a non-student, they have direct access to MCRT. It does not have to go to dispatch. They can simply, that this person meets criteria, let me call MCRT, and MCRT will pick up from there, and the police can go on their way to their policing business.
Let me just add one more thing to this. The decision to utilize the 911 line also was in part to minimize all the thinking that folks have to do around who to call in what situation. And yes, it is still emergency services, but we wanted to make sure that it's as easy as possible and as quickly as we can react quickly as possible.
Yeah. All right, seeing no other hands or questions, thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate it. We'll move on to, I hope they're here, student health services. We're going to have a COVID-19 exposures, campus conditions, and HVAC update. And so we'll recognize Director Stiles and Marks and Opie.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us in follow-up. I was asked to come and provide a quick update, and we met with Senate Executive Committee recently to provide an update on COVID-19, which we continue to see and navigate even as the pandemic has officially been termed as shifting out of pandemic phase by various health organizations and authorities. So we continue to provide notifications to our campus community. We're reaching out to close contacts directly through our Healthy Connect secure health portal messaging, following up with folks individually as cases are reported, and continuing to provide site exposure notifications in compliance with Cal OSHA. During our recent visit, and I'm certainly going to refer to Jillian and Darren, my colleagues who are significantly more well-versed and have expertise in our HVAC systems, there were questions regarding the HVAC. And so Jillian and Darren, if I could perhaps turn it over to you to provide a quick overview on some of the HVAC things that we've been discussing related to COVID with that update.
Libby, who are you sending that to?
Why don't you go ahead, Jillian?
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. And it looks like somebody has a hand up. Is there a question there?
Actually, can you go ahead and share whatever you're going to share, and then we'll take the questions after that.
Okay. So my understanding is that you need to hear a little bit more about how we are managing the ventilation systems within the buildings post the most conservative values that we initially implemented. And we're not very different from where we were when we actually started our requests for everybody to wear PPE and masks in terms of the mechanical ventilations in our systems. And so I can tell you a number of things that will be a kind of surface look, if you will, at the way our systems work. And I know that Executive Director Darren Oakey for facilities, he can add some additional information, of course, about the systems themselves, but from an environmental health and safety perspective, we have a couple of things that we focus on when we're looking at how we ventilate all of the buildings on our campus. And that's not just lab spaces, but it's classrooms, it's office spaces, it's everywhere that we all work on a day-to-day basis. And so the mechanical systems themselves are in good repair. And what we ask of our facilities crew is to make sure that all of those systems continue to function at the most high capacity that they can, because what we're asking them to do is push high volumes of air through filtration systems that would slow the volume of air flow down. So if you think about it in terms of a pipeline that has at the end of it a mesh that stops flow, the same is true for liquid as it is for air. And what we want to do is capture materials that are particulates, things like dust, viruses, all of the things, not just COVID, but all of the things that flow through our systems, using a combination of, in labs, 100% exhaust and recycled or recirculated air. Interestingly, and this is a feature of something that industrial hygiene focuses on, when you pass air through a filtration system more than once, it actually is more effective than a single pass through. And the reason for that is because the filtration itself acts as an initial barrier, and then anything else which is attracted to that filter also acts as a barrier. And so having filter systems in place for a number of months is actually more effective than replacing them every couple of weeks or every month. And so we've asked our HVAC engineers to be a preventative maintenance schedule that takes that into consideration, so that we want to get the maximum efficiency out of our system as possible. And we do that in another way as well. And you've probably heard this before. The CDC and other agencies don't actually regulate this, they only recommend it. And because we wanted to be safe, what we said was the best way that we can get our mechanical system to make the most of the air that passes through it is to look at things from a human scale, a human perspective. So if you open the windows when the mechanical system is on, it's pulling through air that is relatively less clean than interior air. It also does something else. When the air outside, when the temperature outside rises, as you're pulling that hot air through and the system tries to condense it down in what we know as air conditioning, it then creates condensation within the system. And the condensation will collect in areas like collection pans beneath the condenser units. The more it has to try and do that in order to cool the air, the less efficient it is. The pans often flood and run down the insides of the walls. And that's not about whether the system works well. That's just a simple physical phenomenon of condensed air with water vapor in it. And so the best way to get the most out of the system is to keep the windows closed and to allow the air to circulate through the filter, and then in office and other settings to allow that air more than one pass through. In fact, we have, all of California has an internal requirement under Cal EPA and Cal OSHA that says you probably need to be at a minimum of 4 to 5 air changes per hour. And so again, our HVAC engineers have worked with making sure our systems are capable of producing that. Often in lab settings, it's higher than that. So we get a higher air change rate than 4 or 5. And so overall, rather than leave it to chance, what we have is a system that is operating in all of our buildings under the specifications that have been laid out by the CDC, by CDPH, our California Department of Public Health, also by Cal OSHA, which is the California version of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. We haven't left anything to chance. What we've done is engineer the system so that it can fully cooperate with what we need. The reason that you see that number, that MERV 13, so the filtration systems are graded. When you get past 13, between 14 and 16, that's for healthcare. That's for hospitals. And we aren't really in a hospital setting, obviously. We are in an academic setting. And so we've gone as high as we can possibly go without being at hospital grade. That's not just because it's hospital grade, it's because the filtration system is so tight and it has to capture a lot more than it does here. Our mechanical systems couldn't force enough air through simply because they weren't built for a hospital.
Okay, so Director Marks, I'm going to ask you to pause there. We have about 2 minutes, and I saw one hand up go up for questions, and I wanted to give folks a chance for at least to get a question or two. Is that all right?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Senator Sherman, your hand was up a while ago, but it's down. Do you have a question?
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see no other hands up. Okay, so if you have another 2 minutes, so if there's anything else that you would like to add, please go ahead.
All I want to say is if you have any questions after this that come to mind, I'm happy for you to contact me. If there's a description that you need, either a technical one or a non-technical one, I'm happy to provide that as well. Hopefully you've got my contact information. If not, I can put it in the chat.
Please put it in the chat. We greatly.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Director Stiles, Marks, and Oki. We appreciate you. All right, so I'd like to go back to items on our agenda as we wrap up, come to the end of our meeting. I'm wondering if I could get a motion to approve our information items.
So moved.
Oh,
Second.
I'm sorry, to accept our information items, not approve. Accept. And I got a second. Can we accept these items by unanimous consent? If you dissent, please raise your hand now. Who seconded it? I heard a couple of people. Was it Senator? No, not this time. Yeah, it was Senator Adams. Right, thank you. So I see no dissent. We had two quick reports, one from our treasurer and also from our referral chart from our vice chair. You want to read it?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Butler. Thank you. Oh my gosh, lost my train of thought. The referral chart is up. It has not been revised as of like a couple days ago. So if you see any updates, please let me know.
Any questions? Not seeing none. Go ahead, Treasurer Sharp.
Okay, so what you see here is the expense report for this academic year, which is $966.53. Thank you.
Are there any questions? All right, seeing none. We've come to the end of our agenda. May we have a motion to adjourn? A second. Thank you. Thank you all for working so hard. We appreciate you. Please come time in person. Actually, we're ended a couple minutes early, so thank you all very much. Take good care and we'll see you next month.